Welcome to the Wonder of Woo podcast, where we highlight how businesses can scale profitably by serving others well. I'm Daryl Zavadny.
And I'm Ed Howie.
And this is
the Wonder of Woo. If you're a business owner investing time, money, and marketing only to be frustrated by losing customers, then this podcast is for you.
Now, Ed, we have a distinct privilege of having a friend with us today.
This
is so awesome. Delise, we are delighted.
Our first friend
The
to
first
visit.
friend.
We are honored to have Delise Simmons with us today, and we're going to learn a whole lot about Delise, how maybe life experience, work experience, and really ultimately how that dovetails into what we're talking about with the Wonder of Woo. So, Delise, as we get started, I want to understand one interesting fact that I've heard about you is that you want to fish in every state in the United States. Is that really true? What?
It's called Fish All 50.
Fish all 50.
I wish I made it up, but I didn't. So I travel a lot for work.
Okay.
And I don't really care that much about a good restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my thing. But
her?
Sorry.
Yeah.
But what I want to do, I want to enjoy the travel. So I enjoy the work that I do.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's one thing I want to do everywhere I go? I want to drop a line
Yeah.
in the water. So people say, do you fly fish?
Yeah, rod and reel.
Fish? Do you like, yes.
Okay.
Bathtub with goldfish in it. I'll bring a cane pole. And so, yeah, I want to get, I think I'm on 28 states now.
Okay.
Do you have a travel rod or?
I travel with it everywhere I go, a little collapsible rod and reel, and my bait that I bring with me, my lures, and ready to go.
And are you over-indexing on one part of the country or another, or under-indexing, like Pacific
Yes.
Northwest, or,
I think it's South Carolina's
So I was going to say,
Yeah.
South Carolina's my love.
Yeah.
So I've fished all the southeastern states.
Okay.
But I've done fly fishing up in the Pacific Northwest. I get to go to South Dakota in 2025, and I understand I'm going to get to fish in the where you can see it from Mount Rushmore when you're fishing. So how cool would that be?
That's enough.
You're in the shadow of the mountain. So
That'd be beautiful.
more to come on that. I'll let you know.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Well, Ed, of course, we didn't bring Delise on just because of this neat fishing fact,
That's
right?
exactly right.
We brought Delise on because, heck, we think you've got a tremendous business experience. So tell our community a little bit about your experience, sort of how you grew up in business, and because I think it's a magnificent story.
Well, I've been blessed. I graduated from college, and my first real job out of college was well beyond what I should have been asked to do. So I was hired by Southwest Airlines in 1989, and they brought me in and gave me more responsibility. Now they never would have hired me to
Right.
do that, ever. We had no idea what we were doing. We knew how to fly planes. Let me make that.
Yeah.
She wasn't a pilot.
Yeah.
I was not a pilot.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. But I had the good fortune to work for Herb Kelleher. And he brought me aside with a couple of others and said, well, we do customer service really well. What I want us to do is employee service, people service. What I think he was saying was what we now call culture. But
Right.
1989, that wasn't part of our vernacular.
Right.
So he said, go. There was no cell phones, no internet that we had access to.
There have been a number of times, by the way, that Ed and I have dated ourselves on this podcast.
Yeah.
No cell phones, no internet.
Cell phones, no internet.
We had this little thing called a
It's
landline.
a silver generation,
Yeah.
but we all have similar life experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
No phone, no lights, no motor car. So we had to go scour the country, find what companies were doing employee service tests. And we got trained up on kind of everything that you can be trained up on, came back, and we built the Southwest Airlines Leadership University. It was called the University for People. And I got to run that university for 10 years, where every year we taught over 1,000 leaders. And the cool thing about that was, so Herb Kelleher's the president, chairman, CEO. We had 1 week of leadership training for every leader. He sat in my training for a week.
Really?
He recertified every year?
He took notes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, what could I possibly be saying that you would think is worthy enough to take notes? But that's the kind of leadership example that I got to grow up under.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I left Southwest with a couple of others, Ann Rhodes, one of my benefactors and friends, and we were asked by a former board member. He came to us and said, I want to form a competitive airline. I want you guys to join me. We're going to go head to head with Southwest. And it's kind of like cheating on your boyfriend.
Right.
How do you leave Southwest?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, we sat Herb down and just said, here's the deal. We've been asked to start a competitor. And he just lit up and he was like, man, you got to do it. It's like, it's such a kick. So we got permission and left. And he ended by saying, and if I can't compete with you guys, I shouldn't be in the business anyway.
Wow, good for him.
So we launched JetBlue Airways 2 years later out of JFK. And it was, everything from naming the airline, which is a whole nother story, to what cities do we fly to, who do we hire, how do we create a culture. And so that's what launched what I do. Since then, I've done some really fun, interesting work, but it seems to be the Southwest Airlines and JetBlue stuff that people want to hear about. I think because it's a brand everyone's probably had experience with.
Well, but the experiences, the two experiences you had is, one, you got to go into a culture that already existed.
Right.
And figure out how to multiply it and exponentialize it and really ingrain it, right?
Absolutely.
But then you had the opportunity to say, okay, what kind of culture do we want?
Right.
And let's create it. So, the brands are intriguing, but the timing of both is, wow. Just to have one of those experiences is amazing.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into how you serve the world today?
Well, a couple of things I learned is that the values that we have as a person, the values that we have as an organization become the framework for what our culture is. So people bring me in and this is the culture person, and the culture person's going to tell you can't build a culture. So a culture is a byproduct of the environment that you create. And what stands up that framework is the values and behaviors. So
okay. A culture is a byproduct of the environment you create.
Correct.
Okay. So what's environment mean?
So I like the analogy that I like to run is you're a gardener, right? And the behaviors that grow in your garden are the flowers that grow in your garden. So think about the things you do to cultivate a garden, to grow the things you want to grow. You feed it, you water it.
Right.
And then what you want to do to minimize the weeds and the things you don't want is you choke those out. So similarly, us identifying what are the behaviors that work in our department, in our organization. And there's not one size fits all. I talk about Southwest Airlines and fun, and people can draw a direct correlation between the airline has fun as a value and the flight attendants, do crazy songs or whatever else on board with the passengers. That's a very a concrete example of your value is fun. The behaviors are singing the safety announcements.
Right.
So the question is, what are your values that serve you and your organization? And a lot of times people say, oh, I like fun. And sometimes I'm working with people, I'm like, y'all are a lot of things, but
fun ain't it.
and you don't need to be fun. Fun works in one context.
You are.
Who you are, yeah.
But you also have to cultivate that. Like you said in the garden, you've got to plant it and you've got to fertilize it, water it, you've got to expect it, you got to prune it sometimes.
Right. It's the least.
I love that analogy.
Yeah. It's
all the conversations we've had, I've never heard that one. Or I forgot it. Sorry.
Well, and I would even say, and I don't know if you've heard this book, it's called Gardeners, Not Mechanics.
I have not.
And it speaks to basically two perspectives on culture. Like, so one is deliberate and intentional and nourishing, and the other is we just repair stuff. Like, all we're doing is fixing problems, and we're not really building anything or growing anything. We're just repairing stuff. So I'm curious. I've got two big questions for you. Number one is, was this is a nature nurture question for you? Were you focused on culture and all of that before your experience with Southwest, or did that shape you? So that's question number one. Question number two, then, that I'd really love to understand is, why would you leave Southwest? So maybe the first one, kind of nature nurture, because some of our community may be listening and going like, yeah, but I'm not a culture person. I don't.
Well, I don't think there's some degrees like in culture, but
Yeah. See, so what are the first four letters of culture?
Cult.
I'm a cult fan. I really like I grew up at Trinity Baptist Church in San Antonio, Texas, and it was kind of cultish at the time.
Yeah.
I went to Texas A&M University.
Okay.
I went to
That's like cult.
Benevolent
with
cult.
an asterisk.
Yeah.
Benevolent cult.
Yeah.
That's so much
Benevolent
They're the good kind.
Sweet cult. The people got really excited about
no
it.
Kool-Aid involved.
Yeah.
No Kool-Aid, put on the sneakers. I went to University of Texas, which was also cultish.
Yes, that's a cult.
Texas A&M, definitely a cult, went there.
Yeah.
So I'm attracted to people, this is serving others well. I'm attracted to organizations that have a purpose, and it's bettering our world. I bought a Jeep recently. That's a cult.
That is cool.
Yeah.
And we all wait.
Do you have ducks on it?
I don't. I give out
not
ducks.
doing the duck thing?
I give out ducks a lot. But it's the funnest thing when you're driving down the street and you somebody's driving a Wrangler and they wave to you, and it makes your day kind of like, hey.
You're part of community.
Yeah, you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Sure.
Exactly.
Wow.
Okay. So you have always been that. You've always
Attracted to cults. You can
been, no. Okay. So you've always been in cults, but you've always,
Joined one of the street.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, in your case, yeah, and it's likely why you're drawn to the work that you're drawn to. You've always prioritized or prized a community of people, wherever that community might fit, and you had the privilege with Southwest of being a part of that. So, why would you leave it?
It's a great question, and it was opportunity. So it's doing what I did for 10 years. I'm teaching the same people and
The same-ish
and
curriculum.
I kind of got tired of my voice in that context. How much more can I do? Could I have gone? I mean, I often think, what if I would have stayed? What would my life have looked like? What would the trajectory look like? Not a regret, but just it would have taken on a different role. And I've got many friends who are just now retiring that I was there with them. Bob Jordan, who's the president, started June of 1989. I think I'm right. That's when I started.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I'm not saying I would have taken Bob Jordan's spot.
What's crazy is you and I started at Chick-fil-A the same
day.
the same year.
That's funny.
I was June 5th.
I was June.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, though, Delise, about you is that you're a very passionate person.
Yes.
Right. But then some similarities is you also have we'll politely call it an entrepreneurial streak.
Yes.
And a culture like Southwest probably actually fostered that. Some cultures don't. So how have you taken the corporate experience of Southwest JetBlue and how have you then leaned into, because so much of our community is entrepreneurs and business owners, how have you then leveraged that and how's it led into your entrepreneurial era, if you will, of your life?
Well, it makes me, the passion that I have for it is I believe that what we do matters.
Okay.
I believe that what we do helps. So if I stay in one organization and work in that organization, that's fine. But what would it look like if we could take what we knew to be the thing that made Southwest what it was and spread that,
Export that.
as many people. The stuff that we do makes people like their job more. It makes customers like the experience more. People walk away. And I talk about like generational impact of leadership. When you go home, and you go home tonight, and your staff they'll sit down at the supper table with their family, and they'll tell a story. And then the story will have something to do with Ed, my boss, Ed. And they're telling the story to their children. So their children know Ed, the boss, even though you maybe never met him. It's a generational impact.
No pressure, Ed.
Yeah. But so if we can do that better, then we create a better.
What a great illustration. So as we talk about trying to bring intention to this fuzzy thing called woo, or this fuzzy thing called culture, or this fuzzy thing called brand, what a great, we think about employee satisfaction, employee happiness, and we think about legacy. We talk about lifelong customers. I really had never visualized what you just shared there, is that you think about in our own families, growing up, whatever, the different family members either coming home celebrating and sharing and be excited about what they've done, or coming home and sharing the dread of what either happened to them or what they have to do tomorrow, that kind of thing.
Well, and we're influenced by it. My dad was a criminal defense attorney, and he'd come home every night and would tell us stories about clients and people and how people interacted, and I was intrigued. The whole human dynamic, human factors part of life was really important to me, even from when I was a kid.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, to me, this is remarkable because you all have known one another for so long, and there's been a few new areas of discovery, even in this conversation. Number one, I love that.
Connect, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then number two, Ed, you and I have sat across the table and talked about, woo and how you win others over and over and over a number of times. And Delise, you're bringing a perspective on it's like facets on a diamond, right? Where Delise is bringing a perspective that we've historically been speaking to the business owner or to about their customer. And I love that you're kind of bringing in this perspective of the employee that is like, not that we've shied away from it, but
early in, when you think about woo and you think about winning others over and over, and we're talking about lifelong customers, so many of our first episodes have been talking about this brand or this situation, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really entering into is kind of like the secret sauce, or almost the essential ingredient, is that if you're not intentionally creating woo into your culture, if you're not baking it in, which is, if woo is winning others over and over, and to do that well, you have to be well orchestrated, well operationalized, and well optimized. Meaning you have to know what your customers want. You have to actually be able to do it, and you have to be able to do it over and over again, consistently and profitably. Well, how do you expect that to happen for your customers if that's not happening for your team? Meaning that you know what your employees need. You actually figure out a way to deliver it, and then you do it over and over again so that you're not eroding trust. And so it is two separate lanes that are intricately woven together.
Well, your customer service, your external customer service will never outpace your internal customer service.
No, right.
So let that internal service be the metric by which everything else is. And then I would even swim upstream from that and say, it's also who you are internally to yourself. Like, am I treating myself well? Am I treating my family well? Am I treating my
You're speaking our language. That's right.
Yeah, because then I'm a farce, and if there's big cleavage between how I am personally and then how I'm trying to be professionally, it's going to show through. It's not going to be authentic.
Well, that lack of authenticity ultimately erodes all possibilities for trust.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like you're out of alignment. So you've got stress in ways that you can't imagine. So it just. I mean, this kind of work isn't for everyone.
No.
And the number one thing that I would hear when I was at Southwest, the last thing that we did was we invited CEOs in from across the country to see what we did, because we just got asked all the time. So we just opened it up. Yeah. So once a quarter, we'd bring people in. And this is pre 9/11. We could show them, tarmac and everything. Right. But basically, it was a culture day.
Yeah.
See what we do. What's the magic bullet? And every time we did it, the comments would be, this looks like a lot of work. And we're like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot
You
of
got
work.
staff, you have people. This is an operational expense.
Culture needs a budget.
Wow. Write that one down.
Culture needs a budget.
It really does.
It needs
And is that more than just like pizza on Friday?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I love pizza. But
Or casual Friday, like, okay, that's fine. That isn't a culture. Neither is
that's pep day in high school, right?
Yes. Culture's behaviors. That's what it is.
Well, one thing that we do share commonality on is, Delise says culture is behavior, behavior is culture. I say brand is culture, culture is behavior, behavior is brand. And so you can't have culture without behavior. Your culture and behavior are what ultimately create your brand, and you have to index in all three areas.
Right.
And that takes intentionality. Right. Because running a business, running a team, running a department, serving a customer is a lot of work. And if you don't know exactly what the expectations are of that brand, of that culture, and then equip your team to be able to do it, then you're just hoping, like, maybe we'll take care of some people well today, right?
Right.
So I know we're going to probably talk about Southwest in another episode. But would you share the example about, we think about culture as far as the touchy-feeling things and the woo and on Southwest, we think about, which frankly to me is sometimes annoying, the singing safety, that would not be on the top of the list of customer satisfaction. Yeah. But you know what? It is for a lot of people.
Right.
But the thing about knowing when the boarding passes were numbers and knowing what the magic number for the plane was, because sometimes the fastest way that your people can woo is for them to know what matters most to the actual operation of your enterprise, actual financials of your enterprise. Would you share that?
So we did a course, and I recommend it for every organization. And it's basically Business 101 for your business, so that people understand, how do we make money? What role do I play in that? And I understand the mechanics of the business that we operate. So at Southwest, we started off with, first, how do planes fly? Because if you're in the aviation business, you should probably
know that.
Lift and thrust and all the things that make planes fly. But that was the opener for this Business 101, Southwest 101 class. And what we did was, at the time, so Southwest flies 737s, right? At the time, we had 3 different configurations of planes, a 200, 300, and 500 series. Only reason that's important is the seat configuration. Is different. So what we did is we averaged. So on average, if Southwest Airlines planes have 130 seats, then the 76th customer represented a profit. We let everybody know that, so that what it did was,
love it.
Let's,
Is that great? Yeah.
Let's say you're a gate agent in Amarillo, Texas, and you're running a flight out that's low, doesn't, it enplanes 25 people. You could think, oh, good, I've got an easy day. But that's not what they think. They know if we continue to operate like this, we're not going to have a job.
Right.
So we would have gate agents from, Pigs Knuckle, Arkansas, calling and saying, hey, we've got a problem here because this flight's going out empty.
Wow.
And like maybe the 1 o'clock flight is doing great, but the 3 o'clock flight is not.
Y'all need to do something.
Or instead of saying, I'm going to have to send you on the next flight, going, this flight's not full, I haven't hit that number. I'm going to take the extra effort and get you rebooked so you can get in the plane now.
Yeah. And
Which is good for customer service too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is an amazing, that is, I tell that story often because, we think about think about the whole brand experience. So as well, we think about it from the standpoint of product and transaction.
right.
But if your people don't have context, they don't know why. I know you both have heard me say this, but one of my greatest visions around all we're doing around winning others over and over in Woo is that use the example of the 17-year-old working in a restaurant. Yes, they could be cleaning that table because they were trained how to. They could be cleaning that table because it's on checklist. They could be cleaning that table because they got yelled at because they didn't do it 20 minutes ago. Or they could be cleaning that table because they want the next customer to have a clean table. And I think we get, and I'm guilty of it in my own enterprise, we get so busy about let's get you productive and we've got this need and that kind of stuff that I think we're all can be remiss in the contextual perspective that we need to be infusing into our culture and our people.
I agree. And there's two things with that, because what I would hear from the people that I work with right now is I just need somebody to come work for me. So I don't really care. I'm desperate. And a desperate hire will cause a desperate situation. So of course people
Culturally.
Can we have a date?
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
But I also want to interview beyond the resume, because I want to ask questions about that. Like, I want to know that they have perseverance. I want to know they have grit. I want to know that they care. I want to know they have tenacity. I want to know that my HR people are willing to bend a rule for an employee. I'm not going to read that on a resume.
Yeah.
None of that. So that's what I need to know. And everyone doesn't fit. We would hire people at Southwest and they weren't a good fit. And we're like, go down this street because American might hire you this.
That's right.
Because you weren't a good fit here. Nothing against American, but just a different culture.
It's a fit thing.
The vibe of American today is significantly different than Southwest.
Can I put a pin in Southwest, because I think we're going to hit it on the next episode. And what I'd like to do on that is actually maybe just kind of say, I think, this is in spending time with you, I think what I've heard is contextualize things for staff to get it. And then my assumption is that, even as you talked about essentially having a budget for culture, is provide agency for that team member to then take action on that. So it's providing contacts and agency. You're essentially giving them opportunity for that 76th customer and or passenger and all of that.
Right.
I would love, in our remaining time, Delise, one thing we haven't really touched on is Southwest Airlines, amazing opportunity. JetBlue, amazing opportunity. And you've left that, and you're doing the Culture Think Tank, and you're cascading your influence into other organizations.
Got a little book there.
Yeah, and what really, and I want to hear about the book that's in front of you, and I'd love almost like the nickel version of, hey, community for the Wonder of Woo podcast. If you had Delise Simmons sitting in front of you, here's the nickel version of how you would encourage them to consider their business. Because we've got business owners listening who are small businesses, who are, some are solopreneurs, yes. And, the culture's on you if you're a solopreneur. Yeah. But I don't like my boss and working overtime. But, I guess I want to just, pivot to say, all right, so with all your experience, what you're doing now with Culture Think Tank, what's kind of the nickel tour version of, hey, here's how I would encourage you to think about your business culturally, where you are, no matter where you are. So what does that look like?
So just knowing that there's a difference between simple and easy. So what I'm going to talk about is easy to understand versus complex, but it's not simple to implement. So I don't mean to minimize it, but it is easy to understand. It is, I need to know what the values are for my organization.
Okay.
And I need to know that they've been vetted, not me, it's sitting by myself as an executive. I want the group to come together and say, do these values, if we have values, do they still work?
Okay.
Are they still match who we are and where we're going? So will they get us to the next level? Then we need identified behaviors. I want the behaviors to be so specific that employees they absolutely know if this is the roadmap to success. This is a behavioral roadmap to success. Now, I might need to change those behaviors over time. Some work and they, in one context, they don't work over time. And then I get rid of those and we think this behavior serves us better than that behavior. But we are all always working off the same set of behaviors, and it's what's going to make us serve ourselves well, serve our customers well, and make money. That's what we're doing. So shameless plug. That's what I did with this book was it's a quick read. I did that on purpose. I said, I want to put something down to your point. Yeah. You could get on a plane in Dallas, land in Los Angeles. You've read it. It's got exercises, tips. That's what it's designed to do. Because again, I think that people generally, it is easy to understand and they can improve their culture dramatically by doing just a few things around what are those behaviors, how are we amplifying them, and what are the behaviors we want to see less of, and how are we turning them off? And then just the only thing to say is, if you give one values pass, you've given everybody a values pass. So if your brother-in-law works for you and he's kind of a jerk and you just let him be that, then you just negated everything you've done.
Wow.
Sorry, okay. Brothers-in-law.
Sorry. So preamble leadership.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I took the preamble to the Constitution and I broke down what we need to do using the construct of our Constitution. So what does we the people look like? Who are the people that you're hiring? Order for more perfect union. How do you create a perfect union between your employee and your organization, et cetera? So I figure if it's good enough for the United States, it's good enough for your organization.
Wow. That's intriguing.
That's awesome. I haven't read it. I look forward to buying one and reading it. Ed, we talked before we got the privilege to sit with Delise about a couple of questions that we wanted to ask Delise.
So,
and every guest.
Exactly. So since Delise is our first guest, she gets the first round of questions.
Yeah.
And I hope I remember it was 3, right?
It was 2.
2.
Yeah, it was.
That's right, 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Right. I had 3. We edited. Okay, so first question, because food is our love language.
Yeah.
If there was one food, no calories, no concern about nutrition, no dietary problems whatsoever, and no guilt, what's that one food in your life that would be that?
And I can't say 2, right?
Well, what would be the first one? Save the next episode.
I'm going to do savory and sweet. How's that?
Yeah. Nope. Look and see.
Yeah.
So what?
Okay.
No values pass.
No values pass. Hey,
then
you teed that up.
Then I'm in coconut cream pie heaven.
Coconut cream pie. All right.
It is.
Yeah, all day.
Coconut cream pie. Wow. Okay. So if that's like the food, and like food means so much in so many different ways to people, but that's kind of fun. So in all seriousness, that food's pretty serious. In all seriousness, if you're obviously a very missional person,
right?
If there was just one thing you wanted someone to walk away with from having just this moment with you, and it doesn't have to be something we talked about, but what is that one thing that you just really are putting out there in the world and really want people to know that is the way that I show up and serve others?
Well, I hope it's the way I show up and serve others, but there's a scripture that talks about being salt and light.
Okay.
And I think that if we can think about, and the salt being, how do we flavor someone's experience? How do we make it better? How do we, make them salivate over what it is that we're offering, what we're selling? And how can I be the light for someone? I want to illuminate an easier path, a better path. So I think about in my interactions with people, can I be salt and light, and how can I be salt and light? And I can be too salty sometimes. So sometimes I can sure that.
That's episode 3.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that now. But if I can enhance and enrich someone's life, I think that's my role, is to do the best I can to make someone's journey a little easier, a little lighter, illuminate a path, make it a little tastier.
I think we've kind of accomplished that.
We have, indeed. Delise Simmons, honored to spend time with you. We have learned so much being with you. Thanks for just your generosity of time and wisdom. For folks in our community who want to understand a little bit more about how to get in touch with you, how could somebody get in touch with Delise Simmons?
Just go to theculturethinktank.com. Theculturethinktank.com.
Theculturethinktank.com.
And this is on Amazon. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Preamble Leadership. Theculturethinktank.com. We'll get that in the show notes as well.
Indeed. Magnificent. And every time we wrap up, and even with Delise, who is now a part of our cult.
She's part of our cult.
Yeah.
She's part of our community.
Every time we do wrap up, we wrap up by saying what? And Delise, we invite you to do along with us.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Everyone wants woo. We look forward to spending time with you next time on the Wonder of Woo podcast. Thank you for the privilege of being with us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. So that's it for today's episode of The Wonder of Woo. Head on over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to subscribe to our show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on Apple Podcasts will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Daryl and me. Be sure to head on over to thewonderofwoopodcast.com and pick up a free copy of our gift. And please join us next time.